What's up, Panther fans? Carolina's elimination from the playoffs has us looking forward to the future and who will lead this team as head coach. Has Wilkes done enough? Steve Wilkes as an interim coach? Or are there other names like maybe DeMeco Ryans or the hottest of hot names, Jim Harbaugh out there, who are of interest to David Tepper? We're going to try to figure that out today with Marc Ryan from the Fan Upstate and a host of Offsides with Marc Ryan. Let's get into this show. Hey, Marc, man, thanks for joining the C3 Panthers Podcast.
Tony, C3 Panthers Podcast, what is good? Happy New Year to each and every one of you. It is fantastic to be here. Congratulations on what you guys have built.
Man, thank you so much. I reached out to you because of this tweet right here what we saw. Let me see if I can get it up on screen here. I saw that you tweeted out this earlier this week. An informed source tells me Steve Wilkes at this point is unlikely to be the next Carolina Panthers head coach. The same source tells me David Tepper has an affinity for 49ers defensive coach DeMeco Ryans. I want to just start with Steve Wilkes. What has he done as interim coach? That is, a lot of positive things. He's coalesced a team that was just in shambles. Where do you think what has he shown the NFL and David Tepper about his candidacy as a head coach?
Yeah, I think you touched on it there, Tony. I think he's shown that he can win over a locker room. I think he can bring out the leaders of the team, that he can get the best out of a team, and that the team will play harder and more organized behind him. And those are no small feats, especially when what he took over most closely resembled a dumpster fire, right? I mean, let's this
that's being
for all
nice
intents and purposes to be a wasted season. So I think that is no small feat. I also think if you look traditionally and historically at the win one for the Gipper coaches and we want this guy to get the job, those hires typically don't work out very well in the long run. Now, maybe Steve Wilkes is a great NFL head coach in waiting, and maybe he isn't. I have my concerns, and that is not the hire I would make if I was Dave Tepper.
Why do you think, I guess as you've heard DeMeco Ryans' name pop up, San Francisco 49ers defensive coordinator, why would he not be just a lateral move?
Well, for one, he's not a retread. He hasn't been kicked around a lot. He's younger. He can relate better to the new age player. And when I had this conversation with the source, when I received this information, it was apparent to me. Realize it said unlikely. It didn't say impossible.
Sure.
So
sure.
How would the unlikely become likely? How would Steve Wilkes become head coach if Dave Tepper cycles through his options and they all say no, right? You know as well as I do, Tony, if that happens, folks will be coming at me saying, you were wrong, and we weren't wrong. When we put out the tweet, it is accurate, right? It is accurate at that moment that Dave Tepper has no fewer than 3 or 4 different candidates that he would opt for at this moment ahead of Steve Wilkes. That is the information that I got. DeMeco Ryans is one of those hot names. He's younger. There is this feeling that you have to go young and you have to go offensive. And I would love for DeMeco Ryans to try to have a chance to disprove that, especially when you consider that side of the ball is where the strength of this team lies. So a young defensive mind, a guy who's ready for the next challenge, a leader of men, I think that would be a heck of a fit. And again, to put out a tweet on January 3rd, based on information I received that said he's unlikely to be the head coach, TCU is unlikely to beat Georgia, right?
Certainly.
Does that mean they can't beat Georgia? No. Does that mean Steve Wilkes can't get the job? No, it doesn't. He could get the job, but if Steve Wilkes gets the job, it's going to mean that Dave Tepper's reputation has reached such a point that he can't get any of his top 3 or 4 choices.
Yeah, and certainly too is that one of the things is it's unlikely. It would have been likely that Steve Wilkes got the job had he beat had the Panthers beat Tampa Bay this past week, or even Pittsburgh. I think this is Wilkes has done an admirable job, but there are a couple of wins that were left out there that could have made it so that Tepper couldn't have done anything other than Steve Wilkes, but that just wasn't the case.
Well, but your
Froze
two
up.
starting corners, you mean to tell me that single coveraging Mike Evans deep is your best play, and that it's your best play repeatedly in that game with no adjustments? You had a 21-10, you had a 14-0 lead, and you had a 21-10 lead in the fourth quarter. That's a game that you should win. If you lead 21-10 in the fourth quarter, I realize who's on the other sideline, Tom Brady, the GOAT. I get that. But you should win that game. And in large part because of defensive adjustments that the Panthers, under his lead, failed to make. They lost. And they're going home. And he's saying and doing all the right things, and he is a leader of men. But good gosh, man, there were some pretty elementary defensive adjustments that should have been made in that game that would have won Carolina the division that were not. And I saw that all I needed to see to make the determination that that's not the guy. That is the safety school. That is a not bad option that will take the job, right? When we're all looking at colleges, we have a safety school. Okay, we're going to try to do better than this school, but we know we have an acceptance to this one if all else fails. He's the safety school for Dave Tepper. He's going to take the job. Now it's up to Dave Tepper to find somebody better out there, and there's no shortage of candidates. I'm curious, Tony. I'll how the turntables. I'll turn the tables on you here a little bit. Do you feel like, as somebody who lives in and around Charlotte and covers this team the way that you guys do you worry that Dave Tepper's reputation has reached such a level where many interested parties may not answer his call?
No, I don't think so. I think that the jobs, head coaching jobs in the NFL are so far and few between, is that you say yes no matter who the guy is and how difficult they could be to work with. I don't know if David Tepper has reached those types of circles with people high up in the NFL, or at least with the players and the coaches, maybe with fans at a certain degree. But I think that you see what he gave Matt Rule and how much of a bag he gave Matt Rule. And I'm starting to say, hey, I do want to go work with this guy because he's going to pay me. He's going to back up the Brinks truck if he truly wants me. I guess really the question is less about, is Tepper the problem or problematic, but is the situation in Carolina not as appealing as maybe some other jobs are, and not just from the working with Tepper, but the nature of the roster, the lack of a quarterback, what the division. And to tell you the truth is that you can find a couple of ways to spin it. You can spin it as like this team is weak and doesn't have a quarterback and has a long way to go, and while they have some good players on defense, they don't really have a defensive identity. Or you could spin it as this: is they're in one of the weakest divisions in the league. You've got the potential to get in a new coach and a new quarterback and start a decade of winning. So it's kind of hard. That's what I was going to ask you, is why do you've brought this up a couple of times about Tepper, maybe people saying no to him. Why do you think that could be the case, that people would have some trepidation about coming to Carolina to work with David Tepper?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that I really like the vision that Dave Tepper has for what he wants his team to be. But as you know, the relationship with the community and the Rock Hill Project, and not knowing who to trust and who to believe. The soccer coach was fired in year one. A lot of the decisions that have been made at the very top have not panned out. It's not hindsight in life, Tony. Hindsight is not 2020 if you were screaming from the mountaintops in real time. The fact that this team passed up Justin Fields, who in my opinion was the number one quarterback in that draft that included Trevor Lawrence. That to me is an unforgivable sin when you've had the lack of stability at that position that the Carolina Panthers have had. And J.C. Horn is a fine player. I wish he could stay healthy a little bit more
Yeah.
than he has, but that position does not make near the impact on the win-loss column that the quarterback position does. And it has been the island of misfit toys at the quarterback position. It is an embarrassment. Sam Darnold's performance, his he'll look like he's an all-pro 1 minute, and then the next minute his decisions are dumbfounding, emphasis on dumb, and it's maddening. And you had the guy right there. Again, this is not hindsight. You can go back to my tweets, you can go back to my show, and I was screaming, how could you possibly pass him up?
And we were there,
He's
and we were
right
watching
there
it
for
live.
you. 40 touchdowns, 1 interception. That was the answer.
Yeah, we were watching it, and I went nuts myself, as we have a live draft party every year. And then some of the things have come out, though, that Matt Rule was largely behind not wanting to take Justin Fields. So interesting there. David Tepper, to me right now, is kind of on the precipice of ruining his entire, his not legacy, reputation. Is it's not in a good spot. It's definitely in a recession at this point of his public opinion with him. And I don't know if you've seen the movie Glass of Onion or whatever this is, this new movie that's come out right now on Netflix, but he's kind of like the eccentric tech bazillionaire who thinks he can do everything really well. And just because you do one thing really well doesn't mean you can do everything, and that is make decisions about the coach and the direction of a franchise. So we'll see if David Tepper can get this right, if he's hamstrung by his past failures, and if he's scared by those things. Let's kind of finalize with this. Is Jim Harbaugh, though, has become an interesting name. The report by The Athletic about probably a few hours after you put your tweet out on the 2nd, The Athletic put out, and I wouldn't even call it a report. It was a 2-paragraph thing that just said, Jim Harbaugh is interested in going back to the NFL. And I said, here it comes. Here comes the news cycle about Carolina and Jim Harbaugh. This is a name, though, that could walk the line in the middle for David Tepper, and that is someone that has experience, right? Someone who has past NFL experience and success, also a kind of NFL pedigree, but also a name with panache, pizzazz, whatever the right word. It's kind of the sexier of names when it comes to this. Your thoughts about Jim Harbaugh? Is he using this as a tool, you think, to just get $1 bazillion in Michigan, or could he be in the NFL, and would Carolina be a potential landing spot for him?
Tony, this is not your fault, but there is an update on my Twitter feed. Yesterday, we had on New York Times bestselling author John U. Bacon. He authored Overtime, an inside look at the Michigan football program. He was given full access for a year, where he lived, worked, etc., inside the Michigan football building. And what he told me, as somebody who's known Jim Harbaugh personally for over 30 years, and as a result was given that access, that's why we had him on the show yesterday. He said that Jim Harbaugh is very disgruntled at what's going on in college football. Very disgruntled. When we first had him on, when this book came out in 2019, he said, Mark, I can tell you conclusively that Michigan is not cheating, but 75% of the Power 5 programs are. And he said, during my time at Michigan, being embedded there with the program, I would talk to the recruiting department about 4- and 5-star players that, one day the kid was really interested. The next day there was a Porsche in his driveway, and they knew at that moment that they weren't going to get him, because if there's a Porsche in the driveway, he's out. Well, Jim Harbaugh is a man of character, wants to do things the right way, and was not cheating. When have we seen Michigan get over the hump and beat Ohio State? Oh, yeah, when NIL is now legal, right? It's not a coincidence, ladies and gentlemen, that Michigan has taken the next step when NIL has become something that they can do, because Jim Harbaugh was unwilling to do that. But he is souring on what is going on in college football, with a transfer portal, with name, image, and likeness, etc., the same way that myself and many other traditionalists of the sport are souring on what we're seeing. To Jim Harbaugh, you play in the bowl game. That is a completion of your commitment to your team. That's how I see it. That's how Jim Harbaugh sees it. And the fact that that's changing, it's natural to kind of have a feeling of the hell with this. I don't want to re-recruit my roster every single year. Ryan Day said last year it's going to take $15 million a year just to re-recruit the roster we already have. You know, um, and Jim Harbaugh's tired of that, and I get it. And so, yeah, I do think he is there for the taking. I do think that Dave Tepper, for reasons we've already mentioned in this podcast, may have to pay significantly more than anybody else. But I asked John U. Bacon, with knowledge of Jim Harbaugh and his preferences, to rank the three possible positions in the NFL that he has been linked to in terms of attractiveness. And are you ready for this, Tony?
Yeah.
Number 3 was the Denver Broncos.
Okay.
Number 2, wait for it, the Indianapolis Colts. Number 1, the Carolina Panthers. Said it on our show yesterday. His wife prefers the warm weather. In many respects, that is the perfect environment. My concern and the concern of Carolina Panthers fans is, man, with kind of some of the bad vibes surrounding the franchise and the ownership right now, can that be overcome? You know what I mean? Can that be overcome? Money has a way to overcome a lot.
I agree.
The wealthiest coach right now in the NFL is Sean McVay. His contract is incentive laden. He's making between $15 and $18 million a year. Number 2 is Bill Belichick at 12.5. John U. Bacon floated $20 million a year.
I believe
$20
it.
million a year.
I believe it.
That's what it's going to take to resurface, to give a facelift to your franchise. Part of that is on Dave Tepper. Part of that has to do with previous ownership, but it's the whole, no consistent winning, no consecutive years of winning records in the franchise's history. But if that is the price for respect and relevancy, it's time to open up the coffers, and it's time to bring Jim Harbaugh to your organization. And if Dave Tepper can be hands-off in a way that Jerry Jones has been unable to be, right, then this could be a playoff team under Jim Harbaugh, perhaps next year, certainly the year after next.
Just leave you with 2 thoughts here. One is good news for people who don't like, who want kids to play in the bowl games. At least with the NIL, you can maybe write that into some advertising contract with a company that you have to play in the bowl game, because that's
or
why
those scholarships, Tony. How about those scholarships? Why are the scholarships not written in a way that you have to complete the season? Otherwise, your scholarship is not paid in full, or you owe money back. I don't understand this. It is so sad that what the games we grew up with being the biggest games are now viewed as the Pro Bowl. You know what I mean?
Right.
That is beyond sad to me.
Well, the boosters are going to be writing the check. So, man, I tell you, the booster, when that car dealership says, I'll give you this car, but it's on contingent on you playing in the bowl game, is maybe they'll think of it. The other is this, as somebody brought this up, is there was a struggling team called the San Francisco 49ers with a wonderful quarterback, or a quarterback that had been lost in the shuffle before, maybe similar to a Sam Darnold. And that was Alex Smith. And guess who brought them to the playoffs? That was Jim Harbaugh. So maybe Sam Darnold isn't as off-putting to someone like Jim Harbaugh as some may think. Man, Marc Ryan, Marc, thanks so much for your time. Please tell everybody how they can follow your show. The Fan Upstate, Spartanburg, covers the Spartanburg region. And here's an interesting thing to you. You're in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm in Greenville, North Carolina right now. It's the Greenville to Greenville connection.
My wife's alma mater, ECU.
Yeah, that's mine. Wonderful.
Is there. So, yeah, man. So we host for the Fan Upstate in the Carolinas. I'm in Greenville, South Carolina. We cover Greenville, Spartanburg, and Clemson. The Fan Upstate, our show Offsides, is on 3 to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. And I'm also hosting nationally for CBS Sports Radio. My next show with CBS will be a week from Saturday, the 14th, from noon to 5 p.m. So have a lot of good opportunities there, man. And I really respect the heck out of what you guys are doing as well, and the hustle that you guys have to build what you have from the ground up. You know, we heard Mark Stoops at Kentucky say that some people in sports are born on third base. You guys were born in the batter's box, and you
Yep.
built what you had over a period of time. And I respect, honestly, man, the hell out of that. I invite your audience to follow me on Twitter. I'd love to have you at Marc Ryan on air. That's at MARC Ryan on air. We look forward to returning the favor and having you guys on our local show here, man. And continued success to you, man. Really proud of what you guys have accomplished.
Thanks a ton for your time, Mark, man. You have a good one.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks so much. Take care.